Hey, Morgan family and friends, this is video number 5 already. We've made it to number 5. And this will probably be the last video on the Morgan side for a while. Some of the lines sort of dead end and we don't have any information or documents on some of them. So what I want to do in this last Morgan video before I go to the Brookshire side, which we'll have several episodes of that, but it might take me a while to get to the Brookshires, and I'll tell you at the end why. What I want to do in this one is I didn't really cover in video 4 when we were talking about Melinda Evelyn Langford Morgan, Grandma Morgan, whose picture where she looks scary in the rocking chair. It's her side of the family. I didn't really cover the Ropers, and the Ropers go into the Graves family, which is very important in the founding of Jamestown, Virginia. I did talk about Jamestown in the previous video, but I need to talk about Thomas Graves because he was one of the earliest settlers in 1608, and you're descended from him. So we need to talk about him. And then I want to just sort of do a quick roundup of the Morgan generations, just call them out and tell you the names. And then we're going to end the Morgan side videos until we find additional information that's worth listening to. You might question whether any of this is worth listening to, but that's all right. And then it'll take me a little while to get my research together and start the videos for the Brookshires. But I sure have enjoyed the Morgans. I moved out to my porch studio. I'm getting claustrophobic back there in that back room. So it's so nice out here today and so cool. And I'm making this video on October 1st. I hope y'all got up and looked at the moon this morning. It was a blood red moon, full moon on the horizon this morning, and it was so beautiful. I was so glad I got up and got to see it. So I hope y'all got to see that this morning. But let's get on to the genealogy. What I want to do is I'm going back to Melinda Evelyn Langford, and her picture is on the Facebook page, and her parents, we talked about Joab Langford and his wife Matilda Roper. And so this is Matilda's line. So let's go back to the beginning. We're talking about Delvin Morgan and his brothers and sisters. We're talking about his line. And Delvin's mother, or Delvin's father, was George Felix Morgan. We know that. And George Felix Morgan's mother was Melinda Evelyn Langford, married Will Morgan. Melinda Evelyn Langford's parents were Joab Langford, the Civil War veteran, and Matilda Roper. Now we're going to go from the Ropers. Matilda Roper's father was Aaron Roper, and her mother was Rachel Meredith. We don't know much about Rachel Meredith. I don't have anything past her. I need to keep working on that and try to find out who Rachel Meredith Roper's parents were. But we're going to concentrate on the Ropers today. And Aaron Roper was born in 1784 in North Carolina, and he died in South Carolina in 1855. Aaron's father was named Meredith Roper. I know that sounds like a female name, but Meredith can be a men's name too. So his father was Meredith Roper, born in 1735 in Virginia. So many of your ancestors go back to colonial Virginia. And he married a woman named Mary. We think her name was Mary Lucy Brown, but I haven't documented that enough to be 100% sure, but we think that was her name. Meredith Roper's dad was named John Roper, and his wife was named Mary, and we think her last name was Clay. And they were, of course, in Virginia. And John Roper's father was also named John Roper, and his wife's name was Susan, but we have not found Susan's last name. I think they probably know the first name Susan because she may have been mentioned in his will. Now I'm turning my chart over here so I can look at it. And we're going to John Roper's father was also John Roper, who was born in 1645 in Virginia, and he died in 1697. That's recorded. His wife was named Catherine Graves. I do not have any more Roper information beyond John Roper, born in 1645. I may be able to find it. If I do, I'll let you know. But we're concentrating on the Graves family, Catherine Graves Roper. Catherine Graves was born in 16 we don't really know for sure. She could have been born anytime between 1625 and 1645, sometime in that period. We don't really know. But Catherine Graves was John Roper's wife, and her husband, sorry, I told y'all how my brain does, and it's doing it this morning. So let me slow down. Catherine Graves' father was Captain Thomas Graves, born in 1599 in England. Some people say he was born in France. That can be disputed, but I'm pretty sure he was born in England. And his wife was Catherine Croshaw. That's a very important name in Jamestown history as well. But Captain Thomas Graves was born in he was not born in 1599. He was born in 1584 in England, and he died in 1635 in Virginia. We have his will. You can find his will. You can find numerous deeds and land grants. He was given several land grants in colonial Virginia, and he was one of the early founders of Jamestown. You know, Jamestown, Virginia was the first permanent English settlement in the New World, founded in 1607. Captain Graves and his ship, he came on the ship Mary and Margaret, and it landed in 1608, 1 year later, and he was there. He served several capacities. He was an assemblyman, a government official. He was a sheriff for a while. He was given several land grants up and down the rivers that came from central Virginia, you know, to the Atlantic Ocean. He was given several land grants, and they usually granted them in lots of 100 acres. And so they called them hundreds, and they named them for the people. Smith's 100, Graves 100. So if you drive up in that area of Virginia today, you'll see road signs that'll point toward so-and-so 100. That's the 100 acres that they got, and that's how they called that area. So he got several land grants. He has several court records. We know when he died. We know when his will was probated. We know what his children's names were. We know what his wife's name was. So Captain Thomas Graves is important because he was an early founder of Jamestown, Virginia, and you can qualify for membership in the Jamestown Society through several people, including Captain Graves and Catherine Croshaw Graves' father. It cost about $600 or $700 to join the Jamestown Society. So if you got an extra few, I can't do it. If you got a few extra hundred laying around and want to join it, you can. They do have meetings, and they do a lot of good with that money. They use it to preserve the history. So it's money well spent if you've got it. If I ever hit the lottery, you know, I might go ahead and join, but I can't go to the meetings because I can't drive 7 or 8 hours up to Jamestown to go to the meeting. I could, but nah, I'm not going to, especially not now. So anyway, you qualify, and that's pretty good. We do know that Thomas Graves' father in England was John Graves and Agatha Greenhurst, and their line keeps going on. And that brings me to another point. I really haven't talked about your lineages in England and Scotland and Ireland and Wales, the British Isles. I haven't really talked a lot about those, but that's a whole other video. A lot of your lines are documented to go back to the nobility of the British Isles. But that's not unusual for people in America who have colonial ancestry. 60% of all people in America who have colonial ancestry, that means before we became the United States of America, before the Revolutionary War, 60% of all people who can trace their ancestry back to colonial America can also go back to nobility in Europe. Why? Why is that? Because Nobility and inheritance in Europe was paternal, and the land and most of the possessions at the death of the nobleman went to the oldest son. So if you were not the oldest son, if you were the daughter, or you were the second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever son, you didn't get the inheritance. You didn't inherit the estate. And so when the New World opened up, it opened opportunity. So some people came to the New World for religious persecution. We talked about your French ancestors and your Belgian ancestors. They came primarily for religious freedom. But your English nobility and some of your Scottish, and sometimes the Scottish came for religion too, but a lot of them came for economic opportunity because they were in the noble families who didn't get the inheritance. So they came to the New World to build a fortune, and a lot of them did it. Didn't trickle down to us much, did it? I've got a lot of that too. And some of that nobility goes back to royalty, but it's way back into the Middle Ages, like King John, the son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. All of you are descended from the Plantagenet, some people call it, line of kings and queens. And I haven't really talked about that. I'll do a separate video on that. But they intermarried with nobility. The kings and queens of Europe, they married the nobility. And so you have noble ancestry, and the Graves and all of those go back. Thomas Graves' father, Thomas Graves, married Joan Blagrove. The Blagroves are a noble family. The Croshaws are a noble family. Catherine Croshaw's father was Raleigh Croshaw. He was from a noble family. Her mother was Unity Ursula Daniels, and her father was Peter Daniels, who married Anna Mainwaring, and the Mainwarings were a noble family. They had these beautiful country estates, some of them still standing in the British Isles. You can go visit them. They had castles like Donna's descended from the Burgleys and the Cecils that founded the state of Delaware. We're going to talk about that in the Brookshire videos. Cecil, they were called. Lord Cecil. William Cecil was in the court of Queen Elizabeth I. And the Cecils founded the state of Maryland. And you have Maryland ancestry. The Brookshires actually came to Maryland in the 1600s. We're going to talk about that when we get to them. But going back to Thomas Graves, if you Google Captain Thomas Graves, Jamestown, Virginia, you'll get a lot of documents and information about Thomas Graves, your ancestor. He would have been it would be Delvin Morgan's sixth or seventh great grandfather. He's descended from. So you're descended, be your eighth or ninth grandfather, depending on what generation you are watching this. So it was important to me to give you that connection to another connection to Jamestown, Virginia, and a person that was so instrumental in the founding of this country. All of your Revolutionary War ancestors and things of that nature, and talking about your European nobility, they were on different sides at different time periods of squabbles that changed the house that was ruling in England, the House of York, the House of Lancaster, the Stuarts, the Tudors, all of when these houses, when the government changed, your ancestors were part of that drama. They were often in the courts of the monarchs in one way or another. And I think back, and mine too, because, I told you, Donna and I both have this strong colonial ancestry. We go back to some of the same ancestors. We both go back to Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. If you've ever seen the movie A Lion in Winter with Katharine Hepburn, she played Eleanor of Aquitaine. If you hadn't seen it, go find it on YouTube or somewhere. That's your ancestor through their son, John. King John, who's in the Robin Hood legends and stories. Well, there was a real King John. He was an idiot. I can say that because I'm descended from him too. He really was. He's the one that they took out in the woods and told him, "You're going to sign this Magna Carta to give us more liberties, or we're going to kill you." So he signed it. And we're glad he did, because it was one of the premier documents in history that eventually led to our own Constitution in this United States. So the Magna Carta in 1215, you had ancestors that were at the signing of the Magna Carta. We know that. That's documented. There's no question. And you're also descended from King John of England, the son of Henry and Eleanor. And you talk about drama. They called Eleanor your great-grandmother. Here I am going into it, and I was going to do a separate video. They called her the grandmother of Europe. She went on these great processions through France and Luxembourg and England when she was queen. She went on these great processions, and thousands came out to see her. She was greatly beloved, but Henry was scared of her because she was a strong woman. He kept her locked up in the castle of Chinon for a long time, but she was married twice. She first married the King of France and had 2 sons with him, and she divorced him and went to England and married Henry and had 4 sons and some daughters. And one of the sons was King Richard, the Lion-Hearted, and Prince Geoffrey, and they had a son, Henry. He died young, and they had John. Their young became the king. So I'll talk more about them later, but go watch that movie, A Lion in Winter, with Katharine Hepburn, and that's your ancestor. It's kind of neat. I like to watch it at Christmas because that movie is set on Christmas Eve, and it's kind of weird. It has a little bit of language in it because you know how Hollywood does, but it's really good. Okay, this won't be as long as the others. I just wanted to do that quick update. And what I'm going to do to close, I'm going to read the generations, and you can find the charts on WikiTree and FamilySearch.org. The family chart's on there. You have to sign up for Family Search, but it doesn't cost anything, and they won't sell your information to anybody that'll bother you. So it's real safe. I've used it for decades. So FamilySearch.org. Everything's on there. I like that better than WikiTree. I told you why. Let me just read you the generations, and you can hear your generations, and then I'm going to turn this thing off and go walking. Delvin Lee Morgan, that's who we've been talking about. His parents were George Felix Morgan and Martha Ella Manus. I'm sorry, that's not true. Yes, that's true. His parents were George Felix Morgan and Martha Ella Manus. His grandparents were Will Morgan, Melinda Evelyn Langford, William A. Manus, let me get it right, and Molly Hackney. His great-grandparents were Samuel H. Morgan, Hannah Nicholson, Joab Langford, Matilda Roper. Sun's coming out and getting in my face. John C. Manus, Martha Cole, James Brantley Hackney, and Sarah Ellen Kirk. His second great-grandparents were Wesley Morgan, Janice Bryant, Alfred Nicholson, Polly Chastain, Henry Langford, Tabitha Clardy, Aaron Roper, Rachel Meredith, William Manus, Martha Whitten, William Cole, Lucy, we don't know her last name, Joseph P. Hackney, and Polly Harris Phillips, William Kirk, and Sarah, we don't know her last name. His third great-grandparents were Gideon Morgan, Patience Cogswell, John Nicholson, Susan Brown, Edward Chastain, Hannah Brown, Elliot Clardy, Nancy Ann Ferris, Meredith Roper, Mary Lucy Brown, George Manus, Melinda Lawson, Archibald Whitten, Mary Wheat, Robert Hackney, Dorothy Davenport, William Phillips, Piety Thompson, and William Kirk. We don't know some of them, so that's why there weren't that many. His fourth great-grandparents were Samuel Morgan, Rachel Kibbe, Emerson Cogswell, Mary Miles, William Nicholson, Reverend John 10 Shilling Bell Chastain, Mary O'Brien, Daniel Brown, Dorcas Barnes, John Bradford Clardy, Mary Clardy, William Ferris, Margaret Montgomery, John Roper, Mary Clay, Seth Manus, Susan Patsy Fields, William Whitten, Martin Davenport, Hannah Baker, Joel Phillips, Elizabeth Harrington, Lewis Kirk, and then his fifth great-grandparents We don't have as many of those. James Morgan, Edward Cogswell, Joseph Miles, Pierre Chastain Jr., Abner Brown, Aaron Barnes, John Clardy, Benjamin Clardy, John Ferris, John Montgomery, John Roper, William Jacob Manus, John William Whitten, John Harrington. Those were the fifth great-grandfathers. Here are the fifth great-grandmothers. Mary Averill, Hannah Brown, Deborah Ferris, Mildred Archer, Dorcas Greenwood, Deborah Olds, Miss Bullington, Agnes Booth, Ann Rogers, Esther Houston, Keziah Brooks, Mary Jane Dixon, and Mary Rogers. I'm almost through. Well, no, I'm not. His seventh great-grandparents were Thomas Graves, Catherine Croshaw, Benjamin Clardy, Millicent Norman, John Booth, Mary Smith, Robert Ferris, Judith Johnston, Michael Montgomery, Margaret Reed. His seventh great-grandparents, Thomas Graves, Joan Blagrove, Raleigh Croshaw, Unity Daniels, Thomas Booth, Elizabeth Cobbs, Richard Smith, Agnes Kochi, Robert Farish, Sir William Johnston, Anne Mary Chew, James David Montgomery, Margaret McClellan. And his eighth great-grandparents were John Graves and Agatha Greenhurst, Thomas Blagrove and Joan Blagrove, Joseph Croshaw, Peter Daniels and Anna Mainwaring, George Booth and Amy Malone, Thomas Cobbs and Mary Shields, Richard Smith and Jane, Stephen Kochi and Martha Bannister, Lord William Johnston and Sophia Fairholme, Burgess Larkin Chew and Hannah Roy, James Montgomery, and we'll stop there. That gets you through 9 generations. Sun's coming out and getting in my eyes. Listen, wanted to bring y'all up to date. This is going to end the Morgan videos for a while. In a few days or maybe a couple of weeks, got to do some research. On to Granny's side, the Brookshires and allied families, and it's got a lot of good stuff in it. More Revolutionary War soldiers, more Confederate veterans, more colonial ties. It's going to be good. Y'all take care and stay well. Love y'all. Bye.